My mother-in-law spat in my father's coffee, then hurled it in his face. Right there, at our dinner table, my dad, who I was caring for after a stroke, just stood up, humiliated, ready to leave my house without a word. But before he could walk out, I said, "Before you leave." And when I came back downstairs, holding what I was holding, everyone at that table went dead silent. You want to know what I chose in that moment? My marriage or my father? What will you do if you're caught in this situation? I'll tell to what I did next. Please subscribe and comment what you will do in a situation like this. I was never the kind of man who raised his voice at the dinner table. My father taught me better than that. He taught me a lot of things: how to shake a man's hand, how to hold back when your temper flares, how to show up even when you're tired. And when he had his stroke last spring, just months after my mother passed, I didn't hesitate. I told him to come stay with us. No discussion, no conditions. Just, "Come home, Dad. We've got you." He needed help. His memory slipped some days, and his balance wasn't what it used to be. But it was more than that. After nearly 50 years of marriage, his world had gone quiet. Too quiet. He didn't say it, but I could tell he was lonely in that house. My wife, Helena, agreed right away. She even helped get the guest room ready. We moved out the treadmill and dusted off the dresser drawers. She called it temporary, but I didn't think much of that word at the time. I was just grateful she didn't fight me on it. I wanted to believe we were in this together. But that belief didn't last long, not after her mother, Jean, arrived. It was supposed to be a short visit. 3 days, maybe 4. Jean had always been a little much, opinionated, sharp-tongued, the kind of woman who corrected grammar mid-sentence and never once apologized for interrupting someone. I tolerated her, for Helena's sake. But something was different this time. The moment she saw my father sitting at the head of the table, her mouth twitched like she'd bitten into something sour. And from that day on, she never let up. She criticized the way he ate, the way he breathed, even the way he sat. "He's always in that chair," she muttered one morning as she passed him with her coffee. "Doesn't he ever move?" Helena didn't say a word. I bit my tongue more times than I could count. I kept telling myself, "She's just visiting. She'll be gone in a few days." But days turned to weeks. Jean was still there, still stomping through the house in those loud heels, still sucking her teeth every time my father asked a question or told a story. And the worst part? Helena didn't just ignore it. Sometimes she'd smirk. Not a big one, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth. But it was enough to cut deeper than Jean's words ever could. I started sleeping lighter. My chest felt tight in the mornings. I caught myself clenching my jaw at work. But I said nothing. I tried to be patient. I told myself this was just a rough patch. Until dinner that night. It was a Wednesday. We were having roast chicken and garlic potatoes. My father always liked simple meals. Nothing fancy, nothing too spicy. Jean, of course, complained. "Could use seasoning," she said, tapping her fork like it had personally offended her. My father didn't respond. He never did. He just kept eating, slowly, quietly. Then it happened. He reached for his coffee. That old ceramic mug he always used, the one with the chipped rim and faded gold trim. Before he could touch it, Jean picked it up, looked him dead in the eye, and spat in it. She spat, and before anyone could react, she threw it. The coffee splashed across his face, dripping down his shirt, pooling in his lap. The entire table went silent. My father sat there, stunned, trembling, coffee sliding down his cheek. Helena didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She just sat back and smirked again, like it was all one big joke she was too bored to explain. I stood. Slowly. My heart pounded, not from rage, but from something colder. Something final. My father rose too, wiping his face with a cloth napkin. He didn't look at me. His voice was soft. "I think it's best I find somewhere else to stay." And that's when I said it. The words came out before I could second-guess them. "Before you leave." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten anyone. I just turned, walked upstairs, and opened the hallway closet. My hands were steady. I had packed her bags 5 days ago, folded her clothes neatly, zipped everything tight. I don't know why I did it. Maybe some part of me knew this was coming. When I came back down, holding those bags in my arms, everyone at the table froze. Jean's smug little smile vanished. Helena's eyes widened. I didn't say a word. I just set the bags down by the door. And in that silence, something shifted. Something ended. The bag sat there like a loaded gun on the floor. No one moved. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. I stood beside them, arms crossed, heart beating in that slow, dangerous rhythm that only shows up when you've made up your mind. Jean looked at the bags, then at me. What the hell is this supposed to mean? Her voice cracked in the middle, just slightly, but I caught it. She knew exactly what it meant. I didn't answer her. I turned to my father instead. Sit back down, Dad. He hesitated, looking between me and the door like he wasn't sure which of us had lost our mind. Son, I think it's best I. No, I said, firmer this time. You're not the one who's leaving. I pointed to the bags. She is. Jean scoffed. You're out of your damn mind. You're really kicking your wife's mother out over that. She gestured wildly at the coffee-stained table like it was a spilled drink at a bar, not a humiliation burned into a man's dignity. Helena finally stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Let's all calm down, she said, stepping between me and her mother. You're being dramatic. It was coffee, not acid. I stared at her, blinking slow. You watched her spit in my father's face. You smirked. And now you want to lecture me about drama? Helena's face shifted. That mask she wore, the one that made her feel untouchable, above all conflict. It cracked just enough for her anger to seep through. You've made your choice, she snapped. If my mother goes, I go. The words hung there like poison in the air. Jean crossed her arms, a smug look crawling back onto her face, like she thought Helena's threat would make me fold. That I'd bend, just like everyone else did when she started acting like the center of the universe. But I didn't blink. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I said one sentence, quiet, but final. Then you know where the door is. Helena's jaw clenched. You're throwing away this marriage for him? I looked at my father, still sitting, still stunned, still wet from the coffee that soaked through his shirt. And then I looked back at her. He's my father. He's the reason I became the man you married. If you can't respect him, you don't respect me. Jean tried to push past me. You don't get to decide. I stepped in front of her and handed her the phone. I already called a taxi. It'll be here in 10 minutes. You're leaving tonight. Helena looked like she wanted to stop me, like she was searching for some magic phrase that would rewind the whole scene and put her back in control. But it was too late. She didn't just stand by when her mother attacked my father. She joined her, not with her hands, but with her silence. With that smirk, I walked away from both of them and helped my father out of his chair. We went to the laundry room. I helped him change into dry clothes. He didn't say anything until I handed him a clean towel and started wiping his glasses. You didn't have to do that, he said, voice low. Yes, I told him I did. Back in the hallway, Jean was pacing, muttering under her breath about disrespect and ungrateful children. Helena sat on the stairs, her arms crossed, her face stone cold. I didn't look at either of them. When the taxi arrived, I opened the door and stood beside the bags. Jean stormed out like a queen wronged, but no one bowed. The driver helped her with the luggage. She didn't say goodbye. Not that I expected her to. Helena didn't move from the stairs. I closed the door and locked it behind her mother. The sound echoed through the house like the closing of a chapter. She stood up slowly and looked at me. So that's it. I nodded. That's it. Then I walked past her and went to sit with my father in the living room. We didn't say much. I put on a documentary he liked. Halfway through, I looked over and saw him finally, starting to relax. Helena didn't come to bed that night. I didn't check on her. I had made my choice. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a stranger in my own home. The morning after Jean left, the house was silent in a way that felt earned. Not empty, not awkward, just quiet. It was the kind of peace you don't realize you've missed until it settles over you like a warm blanket. My father was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, carefully stirring his oatmeal like nothing had happened. But I could see it in his face. His shoulders didn't sag the same way. His eyes weren't darting around, waiting for the next insult. Sleep okay? I asked, pouring him a fresh cup of coffee, his favorite mug, cleaned, still chipped. He nodded. Best night I've had in a while. I didn't say anything back. I didn't need to. That one sentence was the payoff for everything I did the night before. Helena came down an hour later, wearing that stiff expression she used when she wanted to look composed, but couldn't quite pull it off. She didn't greet my father, just walked past us, made her tea, and sat at the far end of the dining table. Her ring tapped the mug like a metronome of silent judgment. "We need to talk," she said eventually, not looking up. I glanced at my dad. He gave me a small nod and quietly left the room. I sat across from her. No buffer, no performance, just two people finally forced to face what they'd allowed to fester. "I can't believe you actually went through with it," she said. Her voice was calm, but not soft. She spat in my father's face. I replied, just as flat. "And you watched." "She's my mother," she shot back, like that word alone should be a pass for everything. "And he's my father. And he's not well. And he's grieving. And your mother humiliated him in his own son's house." She was angry. "You know how she gets." "Stop." I held up a hand. "That excuse? That ends now. I don't care how she gets. This is my home. And you let her treat my father like trash under your roof." Her eyes flashed. "So that's it. You're the victim now." I shook my head. "No, he was. And I've been silent about it too long." We sat in that tension, neither of us speaking. Then she leaned forward, voice lower now. "You made me choose." "No," I said. "I gave her a consequence. You're the one who made it about choosing." She looked away, toward the front door, like she was still waiting for Jean to walk back in and rescue her from this conversation. Then she asked, softer this time, "Do you even care if I go?" That one hit differently. I paused, took a breath, and answered with all the honesty I had left. "I care. Of course I care. But I won't regret defending my father. Not today. Not ever." She stood up and walked away. No tears. No slammed doors. Just silence, again. But this silence wasn't peaceful. This one was heavier. This one lingered in the corners. That afternoon, I got a phone call. It was Craig, Helena's younger brother. We weren't close, but we were cordial. I figured he was calling to chew me out or tell me I destroyed the family. I almost didn't answer. But I did. And I'm glad I did. "Hey," he said. "So, I heard what happened." I braced myself. "Yeah." There was a pause. Then, "Good. It's about damn time someone put that woman in her place." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "She's been wrecking relationships for years. I watched her destroy my dad's sanity during the divorce. I don't talk to her anymore for a reason. Honestly, man. Respect. I'm shocked you held out this long." We talked for 10 minutes. And when I hung up, I felt lighter. Not vindicated. Not smug. Just seen. The texts started coming after that. Helena's cousin from Tucson. Her aunt on her dad's side. Even her half-sister, who I'd only met twice. Some of them were subtle. I heard. "Hope you're doing okay." Others were blunt. "You did what most people were too scared to." A couple were cold, accusing me of being disrespectful. But those were drowned out by the quiet chorus of "finally." That night, Helena didn't join us for dinner. My father and I ate spaghetti and watched an old Western. He laughed at something the sheriff said, and it made me pause. That laugh. It had been gone for weeks. "I'm proud of you," he said mid-bite. "Not for choosing me. For choosing yourself. That house wasn't yours while she was in it. Now it is again." I nodded, not trusting my voice to hold. Because he was right. By the third day after Jean left, the air in the house had settled, but not the people in it. My father had found a rhythm again. He'd wake up early, sit on the porch with his crossword and tea, and hum old Motown songs under his breath. He still didn't say much about what happened. That was his way, quiet pride, quiet pain. But I noticed how he stood a little straighter now. How his hands didn't tremble as much when he reached for things. Helena, though, was a different story. She hadn't said a word since our conversation in the dining room. She moved like a guest in her own home, silent, detached, polite when necessary, but never present. She slept in the guest room, came down late, left early. I didn't chase her. I didn't ask questions. I just watched. It was strange how quickly distance can build between two people who used to share everything. We weren't fighting, but we weren't talking either. And that silence, that lack of anything, it was louder than any screaming match we could have had. On Saturday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Is this Matthew?" A woman's voice asked, cautious. "Yes. This is Noreen, Helena's aunt." her mother's older sister. I sat down at the kitchen table. Yes, I remember. Is everything okay? I just wanted to say I heard about what happened, and I wanted to thank you. That caught me off guard. Thank me for not letting her run over you, she said, voice tightening. Jean's been like this since she was a teenager. We all learned to tiptoe around her, and look where it got us. Broken families. Bitterness. Nobody calls her unless they absolutely have to. I didn't want to cause a family war, I said, unsure. Matthew, that woman is the war. You just decided not to be her casualty. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. You did the right thing, she added. Even if it cost you something. That last line stuck with me. Even if it cost you something. Because it already had. Helena wasn't bouncing back. There was no apology. No softening. Just that wall she'd built. Brick by brick. Reinforced by pride and years of letting her mother dictate the rules of every room she walked into. I wanted to believe we could get past this. That our marriage was strong enough. But how do you move forward when your partner won't even admit there's damage? Later that day, I ran into my cousin Terrence at the hardware store. We got to talking, and I told him what happened, every last detail. He nodded the whole way through, his eyes narrowing with every mention of Jean. You know, he said, people think the worst thing you can do is cut someone off. But letting them keep disrespecting you? That's a slow death. You did right, man. You picked the person who would have picked you. That hit hard. Because that was exactly it. My father would have fought through fire for me. Raised me, protected me, showed up for every game, every graduation, every damn hard moment. And when his time of need came, I wasn't going to repay him with silence and excuses. I wasn't going to let him be humiliated while I sat at the same table pretending it didn't happen. I made a choice. And no matter what came next, I wasn't taking it back. That night, Helena and I finally spoke again, sort of. She came into the kitchen while I was rinsing dishes. She didn't sit, didn't look at me. I told my mother not to come back. She's staying with a friend for now. I turned off the water and dried my hands. I appreciate that. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. I didn't think you'd actually make her leave. I didn't think you'd let her spit on my father and laugh. That was the first time she flinched. There was a long pause before she said, I didn't laugh. You didn't stop her either. She stared at the floor. I froze. That's not the same. I wanted to let that be enough. I wanted to pretend freezing was understandable. But my father's soaked shirt and stunned face wouldn't let me forget. I needed you to choose decency, I said quietly. You didn't. So I had to. Helena's eyes shimmered for the first time in days. But still, no apology. No real accountability. Just guilt, hovering like a cloud that refused to rain. I don't know what happens next, she whispered. Me neither, I said. But I'm not apologizing for what I did. She nodded once, then walked out. And I stayed there in the kitchen, staring at the darkened window, wondering how long love could survive when two people stopped speaking the same emotional language. You'd think after a blowout like that, after the bags, the taxi, the shameful silence, there'd be some kind of resolution. A shouting match, a late-night confession, a breaking point. But the truth is, most relationships don't implode all at once. They just start to rot quietly from the inside, conversation by conversation, day by day. Helena and I were still living under the same roof, but we were speaking in shadows. Just enough words to navigate the day, never enough to bridge the gap between us. We asked about groceries. We passed the salt. We slept in separate rooms. And every time she walked by without looking at me, it felt like I was mourning someone who hadn't even left yet. My father noticed the tension, but he never brought it up. He just kept thanking me in small ways, washing the dishes when I forgot, straightening my tie before work, leaving the porch light on if I came home late. I could see it in his eyes, a kind of regret that he was the reason the house had split in two. But I never let him take that blame. That wasn't his weight to carry. One night, almost a full week after the incident, Helena knocked on the door to my office. It was late. I was sitting at my desk, trying to make sense of a budget report I'd read 5 times without absorbing a word. She stepped inside slowly, barefoot, her hair pulled back like she'd been pacing in the bedroom. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded and closed the laptop. She didn't sit, just leaned against the doorframe, and looked at me like I was someone she barely recognized. And maybe, in that moment, I was. "I've been trying to figure out what to say," she started. "But everything I come up with sounds like an excuse." I stayed quiet. I wanted to hear it all. "I grew up in a house where my mother's word was law," she continued. "You didn't challenge her. You didn't talk back. You didn't make her angry unless you wanted to suffer for it. So when she acts like that, rude, cruel, humiliating, I don't always know what to do. I freeze. I disappear. I go back to being 13 again." Her voice cracked at that last part, and for the first time in days, I saw her as something more than my wife. I saw her as a daughter who'd learned to survive, not confront. And I hated that she'd been trained to endure pain just to keep peace. But I also couldn't ignore what she'd done. What she hadn't done. "I get it," I said, my voice softer than I expected. "But knowing why doesn't erase what happened." She nodded. "I know. I didn't need you to attack her. I didn't even need you to yell. I just needed you to stand up. Or at least not stand with her." Helena's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. I should have stopped her. I should have told her to leave myself. But I was afraid if I pushed her out, I'd lose everything I built around her. "And now?" I asked. She looked down. "Now I'm afraid I already did." There it was, honesty, finally. Raw and fragile. But even in that moment, I realized something. An apology is only the start. It doesn't fix the memory of that smirk. It doesn't undo the coffee on my father's face. It doesn't erase the silence that followed. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I don't trust you either. Not yet." That was the hardest sentence I've ever said in my life. She took a deep breath and wiped under her eyes. "I want to earn it back," she said. "I want to fix this, even if it takes time." And maybe she meant it. Maybe not. I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I wouldn't lower the bar just to save the relationship. Not this time. Not at the expense of my peace. After she left the room, I sat alone in the dark, fingers steepled under my chin, thinking about everything we'd built and everything we'd risked. The house was quiet again, but this time it wasn't peace. It was pause. We were holding our breath, waiting to see if the floorboards would crack or hold. The days that followed moved slowly, like the house itself was holding its breath. Helena didn't press me. She cooked dinner once or twice, sat at the same table with my father without speaking much. She'd linger in doorways like she wanted to say something, then disappear back into the shadows. And I let her, because I wasn't ready, not to forgive and not to pretend. Some nights I lay in bed and thought about our wedding, about the way she laughed when we forgot our vows and had to make them up on the spot, about the way her eyes lit up when we bought this house together, when we made it ours. We had built so many things, routines, memories, shared decisions. But over time, those things had quietly become fragile. They cracked each time I excused something for the sake of peace. They split every time I let Jean's sharpness slide, or looked the other way when Helena tuned out instead of stepping up. The incident with my father, it wasn't the start. It was the breaking point. The moment where I finally said, enough. On Sunday morning, I took my father to a nearby lake he used to fish at when I was a kid. He sat on the bench quietly, staring out at the water like it was telling him a story only he could understand. He didn't bring up what happened, and I didn't either. But after a while, he spoke. "You didn't just stand up for me, son," he said. "You reminded me that I matter, that I'm not invisible now that I'm old." That nearly undid me. I cleared my throat and said, "You never stopped mattering." "Not for a second." He smiled, the kind of smile only someone who's been through decades of life can wear, tired but proud. "I worried I was in the way," he admitted. "After your mother passed, I didn't want to become a burden." "You're not a burden," I said firmly. "This is your home now, for as long as you want it." We stayed until the sun started to dip, casting gold over the lake. And in that quiet, I felt something settle in me, certainty, peace. When we got home, Helena was in the kitchen, folding laundry. She glanced up but didn't speak. I told my father I'd be back in a minute and stepped into the dining room with her. "I want to talk," I said. She looked surprised, but she nodded. "I've been thinking a lot," I began, "and I know you've been trying in your own way. But this isn't about just being sorry anymore. It's about values, about how we protect the people we love." She swallowed hard. "I know. I'm not kicking you out," I said, But I need space. Real space. Time to figure out if we can rebuild something that won't fall apart the next time your mother shows up. Helena didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just looked down and whispered, "Do you think you'll ever trust me again?" "I think I could," I said honestly. "But not if I rush past this." So, we set new boundaries. Jean was no longer welcome in our home. Full stop. No exceptions. And I started therapy, on my own, to process the guilt and the conflict I'd buried for years. Helena asked to join eventually, and I said maybe one day. We didn't separate, but we didn't pretend either. We existed in a kind of limbo, trying, cautiously, to find our way back to something honest. My father? He started thriving. His doctor said his blood pressure had improved. He picked up watercolor painting of all things. Turns out he had a knack for it. He made friends at a senior center, even taught one of the volunteers how to change a tire. I had chosen him, and I'd choose him again. Because loyalty isn't just about marriage. It's about character. And sometimes, the only way to honor the people who raised you right is to stop letting others treat them wrong. People love to throw around the word family like it's a shield. But family isn't about who shares your blood or your dinner table. It's about who shows up when it matters. Who protects you when you're vulnerable. Who says, "I see you," even when it's inconvenient. I stood up that night because someone had to. Because my father deserved dignity. Because my silence would have been betrayal. And if loving him meant losing someone who couldn't understand that, then so be it. That was the line. And I drew it with both hands. What would you have done? If someone disrespected your parent under your roof, would you have stood up? Even if it meant putting your relationship on the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from the ones who've drawn boundaries, made hard choices, and protected their peace when no one else would.